You are walking down the street and you see some beautiful flowers and you want to tell someone about them in English. That's what today's episode is about. Hikari, take it away.
皆さんこんにちは。毎日少しずつ社交に使える英語の上達を目指すソーシャルイングリッシュポッドキャストへようこそ。今日はぜひもっと自信を持って英会話してみましょう。Are you ready, Percy? Let's go!
Hikari, thank you for that great, amazing, awesome intro as usual. And again, I want to welcome everyone back to the Social English Podcast for Japanese learners. I am your host, Percy, and I want to ask you a question. Are you new? Is this the first time that you've listened to the podcast? If so, I want to welcome you to our podcast here, where you can learn a little social English every single day. If you are a returning listener, I want to say thank you for continuing listening and thank you for the support. I really appreciate it. Okay, on today's episode, we're going to talk about something very common. Sometimes you walk around in life and you see something. It's big, it's small, it's amazing, it's exciting, it's wonderful, it's beautiful, it's pretty. There's something that is so interesting, you want to tell someone about it in English. So we're going to practice that today, and that is the topic for today's episode. But first, as with every episode, I want to do something. I want you to relax. Every time that you practice your English, you should relax and have fun. So we are going to think about and picture me and you at a cafe, just sitting down and relaxing. Can you hear the people around us? Yes, you have invited me, Percy, your American friend, to sit down and talk about English. At this cafe, we are having our favorite drinks. Me, a mocha cappuccino, and you, possibly just a cappuccino. You can hear them pour our coffee. Now, as we sit here at the table, just relax and calm. You ask me some questions about English, and I'm going to teach them to you today. So, today we have a special episode of the Social English Podcast where we are going to correct English in our Social English Repair Shop. In our repair shop today, a Japanese learner of English has asked me to fix their sentences and what they want to talk about today. So the topic of today is flowers. How do you talk about flowers? Okay. Now, today, a listener who asked me to fix their English has done one big mistake that I notice many people make. And I talked about it in a earlier episode of the Social English Podcast. In that episode, I talked about how you should be careful when you use Google Translate. This is our Social English podcast episode 44. Please go back and listen to it. It's very important. How to stop making mistakes with Google Translate. It's a great episode. Please listen to it, episode 44. But today, I can tell that the person used Google Translate when they did their dialogue and why it came out not so great. So let's talk about it. You're walking down the street, you see beautiful flowers, and you want to talk about them in English. You want to express to your English friends, your American friends, your friend from Australia, from Canada, New Zealand. You want to talk to them about the beautiful flowers you saw because you want to practice and improve your English. Okay, so let's listen to what the Japanese learner of English said, and let's fix that. Okay, first, the flowers are healed. The flowers are healed. Okay, now, did you hear something wrong with that sentence? Today, the Japanese learner of English, there's only one sentence they asked me to fix, and that is this sentence. The flowers are healed. Okay, so today, we are going to fix that with social English. And this is how we would do that. Please listen carefully. Today, the flowers are blooming. Today, the flowers are blooming. Please say this aloud or say this in your mind. Think about how you would say this. Today, the flowers are blooming. Okay? Now, when you use the word healing, that usually refers to a human being or an animal that has been injured. So we don't use this usually on flowers, but there are certain specific times when you can use this when we talk about trees. Okay? This is not often. This is not often. Okay, so let's review. Today, the flowers are blooming. Today, we are telling our listener that we observed or we see or saw something today. Today, we saw something interesting. Today, we saw flowers blooming. Today. So this is the present. We are telling someone presently, currently, sometime in the short present, we saw short present or short past, present to short past, that we saw something. So we will use the word today. Today. Today the flowers are blooming. And blooming means the flowers are opening up, they're blossoming, they're open, they are beautiful. So that's why we'd use blooming, the term blooming. And we will use blooming, ing, because we are not sure if they are still continuing, if the flowers are still continuing to be blooming or bloom or opening up. So we want to use the ing form. Okay? So that's how you describe and talk about some beautiful flowers that you saw today as you were walking around and about. Okay? Please practice what you learned today because it will be helpful for you in the future. And you can use this form for many different applications in different ways. Again, if I spoke too fast for you today, please slow down your podcast player to 0.5. And if I spoke too slow to you, then you could speed it up to 1.5 for a fast English part or expression, listening experience of the podcast. Okay? All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Social English Podcast. I know that you learned something valuable from today's episode. Come and visit us at realsocialenglish.com, where you get my free download, The 7 Mistakes Most Japanese Learners of English Make, and how to fix them. You also find more resources to help you get better at English every day. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and now Pandora. Become a patron. Help the show by donating $5 US to help the show. We will show you our thanks by personally thanking you on a future episode. You will also get a new content available there. Join us there at patreon.com/social English. Share our podcast on your social media with your friends. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We will see you next time. Hikari, please end out the show for us.
今日は楽しい時間をありがとうございました。ぜひ私たちのウェブサイトrealsocialenglish.com を訪問して日本語訳と役立つ情報を手に入れてください。また次回お会いしましょう。バイバイ。See you next time. Bye bye.